welcome to the Come Together podcast. My name's Georgia, with me is Matty, Carl and Liv. We're going to be having a little discussion about growing up in recovery, what happens, the process of, from when we get here to like, becoming productive members of society and growing up. So who's going to kick it off?
I will. What I do know for a fact is that I came into recovery at 46, and what I believe happened was I started to use at a very young age. And although I believe mentally I was still growing up, where I found the biggest struggles is my emotional age when I came into recovery and how I deal with interactions, people, relationships, friendships, others in recovery, everywhere I am. I think emotionally I didn't ever develop in the way that somebody else would as they grow up in society without using the way I did, and I came in very unable to manage emotions, and that's where I was really immature. But since I've been in recovery, it's a slow process. I still struggle today with that kind of thing, but I do believe that I've started to slowly over time grow up emotionally. But there's still a lot of work to do and a long way to go.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with that as well, because I remember like going away for a few days and getting clean, and I think it was about 6 days clean, and I got back and my mum had been looking after the baby, and I walked into the house and like I didn't like something, and I rung my sponsor and I was like, how dare she? And she was like, that's your baby, you need to take responsibility, like who do you think, like you need to grow up, like this is your responsibility, and like thank God for the people who's been there before me who can teach me, to stand on my own 2 feet and to take responsibility for myself. And by doing that, it's definitely helped along the process of becoming like responsible and reliable and consistent and productive, and showing up when I need to. It's definitely, cause definitely still slip back as well. Petty. So I can be very petty and selfish and wanting my own way, and I think that's like a toddler, like you said it in the past, haven't you? It's like learnt behaviour as a toddler, what we've never sort of grew out of. Most of the time today I can nip that in the bud.
I just think it's there's no like blueprint or handbook, is there, for like growing up, and it's your experiences kind of indicate like how much you're growing up, and I think like literature and going to fellowship meetings and stuff was a good starting point for me, because it identified like where I hadn't grown up, because that's where I learnt that I had an inability to accept personal responsibility, because I expected everyone to like take care of everything in my life. Do you know what I mean? And I was really like, I had this arrested development. It's kind of almost like I learnt this in rehab, and I didn't really understand it at the time. But it was like when I started taking drugs, it was like drugs kind of froze my emotional development. You know what I mean? So like once that like kind of wore off, I was just like a shell. I was just like a little boy again. Do you know what I mean? And I was like a grown man, but like emotionally I felt like a little boy. And I think because it's easy to say just grow up, it's like, no, how do we do that? And for me, like I learned that like I grow up by adopting responsibilities. Like firstly, take on as much responsibility for myself as I can. And then I'm able to help others to be responsible. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't even know if it makes sense to me. It does, because I know what I'm trying to say. It's like sponsorship. Like I got a sponsor and they helped me, and then I kind of like become a sponsor to other people.
You're responsible for that also.
And this was like a really important thing for me that I learned. That, like, so say, I'll give you an example, right? So Carl's my mate. Yeah, so say if Carl rings me up, not that he ever rings me up in an emotional state, but say for just argument's sake, he rung me up. Say just for argument's sake that he rung me up in this emotional state, right? What I would do is I would try my best to give him the best advice I could, but do I give that to myself? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And by adopting like responsibility, I learn how to like sit and go, you know, like this is good for me and that's not good for me. You know what I mean? And that's how I think that like I start to grow up. Although I'm still very like childish.
Yeah.
I've only got to look at the way I was in active addiction, and everything about my behaviour, the way I reacted with the world and the way I responded was childish.
Yeah.
I would refuse to deal with anything, so I'd run. I'd either fuck off or I'd fuck you off, or I'd use. They were my responses to everything. So I just see that I haven't got the development that others have had, and I'm playing catch up now.
Yeah.
Because and I believe the way that I grow up in recovery is by sticking around and practicing adult behaviour and responsible responses to situations, rather than what I always used to do throughout all my using was not refuse to deal. Like a child would refuse and have a tantrum. I would refuse and have a tantrum to deal with anything, and I'd do anything to get out of that situation. It was always using. You know, it would always result in using, and now it's about sticking around and sticking through it when things get shit. That's where I believe I grow, and I do start to grow up in recovery, is because no one's promised me it's going to be fucking amazing now that I'm clean. I have shit days and good days like everybody else on the planet, and it's sticking through it when it gets tough. And that's where I believe I grow, by going through the hardships of becoming a responsible adult.
Yeah. It's coming into a situation where you want to behave like a child, not behaving like a child, taking on like the suggestion or the guidance of someone else to go, listen, like, you know, it's not that big of a deal, put your dummy back in and get on with it.
I've been forced to kind of grow up this time as well. Like, I feel like I have grew up in recovery in a kind of way. I first come to an when I was quite young. I was still 19 when I first come around, and I've learnt some of my toughest life lessons in recovery. But coming back around this time, I've always relied on my mum for everything: emotional support, financial support, driving me to all my appointments, doing this, doing that. And obviously since when I got home from detox, she got diagnosed with cancer like 5 days later. So that's forced me to grow up in a way and become more responsible for myself, my actions, and actually take on some of the responsibilities for my mum. And I see it as kind of like a blessing in disguise. As hard and sad as it is, it gave me a kick up the backside that I needed to actually show up for myself and show up for my mum as well, as hard as it is. And I shouldn't say I appreciate it in a way, but I do, because it's taught me how to be responsible for myself, because I don't know if I ever would have got out of that mum and daughter relationship, do you know what I mean? Because she has mothered me all my life, she has mollycoddled me. Even when I was in recovery last time, she did a lot for me, and I've never really learned how to stand on my own 2 feet. I got my own flat, she was still doing a lot for me, do you know what I mean? She was still cooking me tea, and then my partner would drive down, we'd pick the tea up and we'd go back home and eat it back at my place. Like, she has always mothered me and babied me, and now I don't have that to fall on at the moment.
That can be a little bit of a curse, can't it?
Yeah, well,
because if someone's doing everything
Yeah.
for you,
I've been used to it all my life. I've been mollycoddled, and
Yeah.
I've like, it's like, oh, they're there, and I've loved it because it suited me, do you know what I mean? I've absolutely loved it. It has suited me.
I'm a bit of an enabler.
Yeah.
Taking care of people.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you something that I found like really interesting is like, because you just said then, like, I will always rely on my mum, and a child will always rely on the parents, no matter how old they are. That it's like a natural thing to always rely on. Now, this is where parents get it wrong, what I believe, this is where parents get it wrong. So if say for example, like and this never happened because like just didn't, but say my mum always did everything for me, do you know what I mean? I would always allow her to keep doing that. Now, a parent's responsibility is to at some point go, no, you're on your own here now. Not on your own, but like, you know, like, you need to go out into the world and like face these responsibilities that adulthood and maturity is all about, do you know what I mean? Now, we have this thing within us that we stamp our feet and we want everything right now. you know, there's a pamphlet in NA called The Triangle of Self-Obsession that really interesting piece of literature that talks about what I suffer with. Do you know what I mean? And that, like, I expect everyone to do everything for me. Do you know what I mean? And if my parents always done everything for me, I would just allow them to do that. You know what I mean? You know, so like this, it's really important that I learn these lessons because I have a son who although like I want to do everything for him, it's not necessarily going to help him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's his own man. And like, my son is an amazing fucking human being. Like, and I'm not just saying that he is. Like, we had a conversation a couple of months ago, and he was talking about saving to buy a house, you know, and getting a mortgage and stuff like that. And I was like, listen, I'll help you. I'll give you. And he went, I want to do it myself. Do you know what I mean? And secretly, I was buzzing. You know what I mean? Saved me a few grand. Do you know what I mean? But like that, you know, like it just made me realise how mature he was at 24, and I'm like 47, and I'm still like kicking off because the kids have, you know, doing this or doing that. You know what I mean? And in reflection to growing up, I live with 2 teenagers, and I see it. I see how like that arrested development stuff. You know what I mean? Because it reflects off Katie and David, you know what I mean? They're teenagers, you know what I mean? And I'm like clashing with them like that, do you know what I mean? Because I still feel like that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I'm 25 and I read something earlier and it was saying like how when you come around you don't even know how to dress and you don't know who you are, you can't be yourself, you don't know how to react to certain situations because we don't really know who we are, and it's about learning all that, well, I was going to say all that again, but sometimes some people forget.
Learning how to live in it.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but thanks for watching. Give us a like, subscribe and a follow.
Nice one.